Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is an interview at the Division of Military Naval Affairs Headquarters, Latham, New York. It is the 29th of June, 2007, approximately 2:15 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
David Patrick Benamati was born 16 March 1957 in Cohoes, New York.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had an associate's degree in civil technology from Hudson Valley Community College.
Okay. Why did you decide to enlist?
At the time, I was in between jobs, and I realized that just having an associate's degree, I wasn't getting very far, and I needed money. I didn't have the money to go back to college. The Army was offering money at the time, and I had hoped at that point to start getting involved with computers because that was the up-and-coming thing back in the mid-'80s. So computer technology was the thing. I was hoping to get involved in that some way, get some education.
Why did you pick the Army?
Well, actually, I went to the Air Force first, but they wouldn't take me because I was married and had a small child. And for the rank that I would be coming in at, they said that I wouldn't make enough money to support my family. But the Army said, sure, we'll take it. Even though you're going to be destitute, we'll take you anyways.
Now, when did you enlist?
I enlisted in 1983, August 5th, 1983.
Okay. Where did you go for basic training?
Went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I also went stayed right there for advanced individual training as a 12 Bravo combat engineer.
What were your training courses like?
Well, basic training was, the same as everybody's basic training. Combat engineer was pretty basic, at least I thought it was. We learned how to build bridges, from timber bridges to medium girder span bridges to Bailey bridges. We also learned some basic infantry tactics because 12 Bravos basically are infantrymen who just know how to use hand tools. Some of the courses were kind of silly as to how to pound in a nail. Obviously, if you're going to be an engineer, you have to use a hammer and nail, but I mean, if you don't know how to use a hammer and nail by the time you're 20, 25 years old, something's wrong there. But I guess they got a lot of city guys who never saw a hammer, but I thought that was kind of funny. They wanted to show us how to use a hammer and nail.
Did your associate's degree help you in this area at all, or you?
Mostly the mathematics, because one of the things combat engineers do is they deal with explosives. And when you're determining the amount of explosives to use, like C4 or dynamite, you have to calculate the proper amount to use. And there's some basic math involved there. So having a strong math background, I was able to just write them off the formulas. They actually had formulas to use. And basic structural knowledge that I gained from my civil engineering background.
How long were you at Leonard Wood?
I was only at Leonard Wood for 6 months. I graduated from AIT in June of '84, and then I was assigned at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, with the 299th Engineers.
What was that like being with them? Did you use your training very much, or?
Stateside duty was a little disappointing. And at the time, nothing was going on in the world per se with regards to military deployments or anything. And stateside duty was kind of monotonous. As an E3, I felt that most of the senior people spent their time just trying to figure out ways to harass the enlisted personnel, because so all I got out of it was a lot of harassment from senior people. And I wasn't impressed by the caliber of people. Very few people impressed me there. And went to the field, which was kind of a mundane thing, but an annoyance too. In Oklahoma in the summertime, it's very hot and very dry. It's just brutal.
How was your wife able to join you there?
Yes, when I was first assigned there, I went to Fort Sill and reported for duty, and immediately they assigned me an E5 NCO to help me get family quarters, find something for family quarters. And within a week or so, I found an apartment, and they arranged for me to go home, get my wife and kids. We packed up a U-Haul and headed down to Oklahoma. Got back there in a few days, set up housekeeping. It wasn't too bad, but
How did your wife adapt to that type of living environment?
to the military, she adapted fairly well. I know some wives have a hard time. Some are very reluctant to even try to assimilate the military life. Some are, they're born into it because they're military brats, their family's military. But my wife adjusted very well, I thought, because she's a very intelligent person, very adaptable, very capable person. The military has its ups and downs, has its way of doing things, and can be very restrictive at times, but she dealt with it, and it wasn't bad.
How long were you in Oklahoma?
15 months, probably the worst 15 months of my life. I hated Fort Sill. It was just hot, dry, brown, and nasty. Always a hot wind blowing, except the winter time it was cold and blowing.
A lot of training, exercises?
At the time, there wasn't. We would go out to the field a week, maybe 2 at a time, and we didn't go out to the field that much, but it was enough that it was an annoyance. I spent part of my time with the unit in the motor pool. They had a tool room in the motor pool that they needed somebody in there. When I got there, this tool room was in total disarray. Tools strewn all over the place. It was just a wreck. It was like somebody just dumped stuff in this room. The guy who was in there was being discharged, couldn't adapt to military life, so he had an attitude of not caring. And, tools were missing, unaccounted for, and nobody was signing tools out. They were just grabbing things, going and fixing their vehicles. So when I got in there and he left, I immediately started to clean up the place, organize it. I established a sign-out list for tools, sign-in, sign-out book. And I even set up a little parts bin cabinet, big, tall, full of drawers, and because they just nuts and bolts and washers just strewn all over the place. So whenever I wasn't handing out tools or organizing the room itself, I was, putting right screw in the right drawer and bins. Made it workable for the guys out in the motor pool. And when I had finished all that, motor pool sergeant came by and see how I was doing. He noticed the change in the tool room. He was very impressed. He was very pleased. He said I did a great job. He liked that very much. Then a couple of days, we had a brigadier general come over to the motor pool, and he just did a battalion area inspection. He liked the operation we had in the motor pool, to include the tool room. And after that, I received the Army Achievement Medal for my efforts in the tool room and how I made it more workable. So it was a good thing.
Where did you go from Sill?
From Fort Sill, I was deployed to Germany for 3 years. I went to Johnson Barracks, right outside Nuremberg. And that was a lot better experience than the stateside active duty, because there they had a real world mission. It was the height of the Cold War, and we knew what our job was specifically. We trained specifically for our job to defend eastern part of West Germany at the time for possible invasion of Soviet troops across the border. So we had a clear, defined mission. We trained for that, and we knew what we were doing. And we spent our time training for that, unlike in the States where we didn't have a defined mission. It was just a lot of downtime and people getting stupid. So Germany was a lot better.
Now, what was your unit while you were there?
In Germany, I was with the 16th Engineers. I was in the Bravo company, nicknamed the Academy. A lot of guys who had gone to PLDC at the time in Germany. That was considered an academy, NCO academy. And in the NCO schools, it's a very strict, very regimented environment in NCO schools. And Bravo company in the 16th Engineer Battalion was a very strict, very regimented company compared to the other companies. So everybody nicknamed it the Academy because of that.
What things did you work on there as an engineering unit? Did you?
Well, we did a lot of field duty, usually at Grafenberg, Germany. We went to Hohenfels quite a bit, and we worked on our engineering tactics for putting up obstacles, barbed wire obstacles, triple San Constantino obstacles, minefields, things of that nature. Practicing how to put in cratering devices for putting holes in roads blocked in the advance and things like that. We had tracked vehicles and dump trucks. We had 113s, tracked vehicles, and we also had dump trucks that we used to haul materials. So we had a real world mission, like I said. It was.
Did you get much time to do touring in Europe while you were there?
Well, we did have downtime, other than just very local travel. I was only in E5 and being married and had 3 kids by that time. Didn't have a lot of money. And so we didn't have the opportunity to travel much. But every once in a while, we did get away. In, I think it was '87, my parents were able to come over and visit for 2 weeks. While they were there, we traveled down to Austria and to northern Italy, and we actually visited the village where my grandfather was born. And we met some family there and spent a few days in Italy. And that was a nice thing. That was by the height of our travels. We also went to the Black Forest, Garmisch. Try to show my folks around as much as possible because they've never been to Europe.
How did the local German people, did they welcome you, or what were their relationships like?
The older generation was more accepting and welcoming of the GIs there. One of the things that struck me odd when I first got there, I was traveling from the airport when I first got to Germany down to Nuremberg, and when we got into this one little town, we had come to an intersection, and we were about to make a turn on down this street, and this elderly gentleman who was staying on the street corner was going to go into the crosswalk, but stopped, backed up, and kind of waved the bus on, and as we started to pass by, he took his hat off and kind of, took his hat off to us, knowing that we were military personnel. So the older generation who had been through the war, or at least the Reconstruction after the war, had a true appreciation for the American presence in Germany. And I didn't see much of it, but I heard a lot of people talking about at the time small little demonstrations in the bigger cities of the youth in Germany, people usually under 25 or so, who were protesting American presence in Germany. They apparently had no concept of what had happened during the war, even before the war, and after the war, and how we as Americans in the British rebuilt Germany from the ground up. And the country was totally decimated. And we pumped in billions of dollars for Germany, along with the help from the English, to rebuild Germany. I mean, Germany wouldn't be what it is today had we not been there. I mean, the Berlin airlift was a classic example of cooperation and aid to Germany and its people. We were at a small folk fest. One of the things that the American community, working with the German government, tried to do was, on a regular basis, have these little folk fests, the Germans called it, where they were usually on American concerns, and they would invite Germans to come in as well. They're little festival things. They had little food stands, and they had rides and crafts, something to bring the Americans and the Germans together, to socialize and to get to know one another and to be more accepting of each other, and to foster a sense of community with the Germans. And so I took my wife and kids to this one little craft fair, or this folk fest. And they had little pony rides for the kids. So you got to get these tickets. So I went up to the booth. I had my German marks that I converted from American money, and I bought some tickets. And I was standing in line waiting with the kids. And this elderly gentleman, probably about, I'd say 70, 72, nice looking man, you know, fairly well dressed, bumped me and handed me a 10-mark bill. He said, "Here, for the kids." I said, "Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the offer, but I got tickets for the kids." He goes, "Here, buy the ticket, buy more tickets." And I felt a little hesitant because he was a stranger. I didn't know who he was. So reluctantly, but graciously, I accepted his money. So the kids went on the ride with the ponies, and they said they wanted to go again, so I went and got more tickets. Standing in line again, the elderly gentleman came up to me a second time. This time he had his wife with him, and he handed me a 20-mark bill. He says, "Here, buy the kids some food." I go, "Well, I have money." He says, I was going to buy them money." He says, "Well, here, buy what they want, buy what they want." I said, "Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your generosity, but why are you giving me money?" He goes, "Well, I just want you to know that my wife and I appreciate the Americans being here. We came through the war, and the Americans helped build up this country, and we really appreciate the Americans being here." So that gave me a sense of at least some pride in being American, that we helped rebuild that country. So it was a heartwarming experience.
So after your 3 years there, where did you go?
Well, after that, that was my ETS, and I decided to get out of the active duty Army. But part of my out processing from Germany, I contacted, they had, right on the base there, they had a National Guard liaison. So, and I knew that, and I liked the military, I liked most of the aspects of the military. I didn't like being away from home, away from this area. And I wanted to be still involved in the military, but not active. So I joined the Guard through a liaison in Germany. And I left the military, came back home.
When was that when you left?
We left, my wife left in August of '88, because she went home a few months early to set up housekeeping and to get the kids enrolled in school. I wasn't due to ETS in October, well into the school year. So she came back early to get the kids ready for school. My daughter was going into second grade, I believe, at the time. My son was going into kindergarten. So she wanted to get them all set for school. And I left in October of '88.
And what kind of guard unit did you join?
Well, I came right here. This is where the recruiter had told me to go here. I got here, and the recruiter put me in headquarters troop command. It was headquartered here in Latham. Because I told him I wanted something with engineering. That was my background, and he had a slot for a 51 hotel, which is an engineering construction supervisor. So they put me in engineering section of Headquarters Troop Command.
And how did that work out?
Well, it was a cultural shock for me coming from active duty. The National Guard was much more laid back at the time, and I had 2 officers and another enlisted in this section, and I had a captain and a lieutenant colonel. And when we were in our office doing whatever, the captain would go, "Hey, just call me Jim." Captain Margot, just call me Jim. That to me, I was taken aback because I never called an officer by his first name, either Sir or Captain Smith or whatever. And Lieutenant Colonel, same way. Said, just call me Larry. No problems. We're really laid back here at Fort Lauderdale. So I was really, strapped and always at parade rest when I was talking to the officers. That's the way it was in active duty. But I had come into an E6 position. I was an E5 promotable, so I went to the E6 promotion board, passed the board, but a couple months later I was ETSing, so I didn't bother getting my 6. I had to wait for points anyways. They had an E6 in that section, and I later found out that we were double slotted. Now the E6, and I kept asking about getting promoted to E6 because I joined thinking I was going to become an E6. They kept, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it. And finally I found out that they couldn't promote me to 6 because the other E6 was already in the position, and you can't put 2 E6s in one position. You can always put one down, excess, and that's what it was, that was excess. I didn't realize that at the time. And it bothered me because the fellow who was in the E6 position was overweight, refused to take a PT test. He would not run. In time to run, he'd walk. No one did he failed to run, he just walked. Didn't care. He knew there was no consequence to his failure. Nobody's going to do anything. And like I said, he wouldn't do the push, do the sit-ups, just flat out test. And at the time, 80, we were taking what they call the SQT, a yearly test, a written test of your MOS skills. And the SQT, he just blew it off, failed it, I passed it. And I passed my PT test. And I was not overweight, yet they still wouldn't promote me. They kept the guy in the 6th position when he didn't even want to be that were necessary. So it stuck in my craw for quite a long time because I was being screwed over on that.
Did you end up being promoted?
So what happened was, Troop Command in January of '89, December '89, we were told that we were going Troop Command was in places with the 40th Division. At that time, the was headquartered in New York City, and that was Troy, and to Camp Smith. I flip-flop, people were in place, and was going to be moving to 42nd Division headquarters, and people in 42nd moving to Camp Smith. Time, engineering position, infantry division, so they clerk 71 Lima. I wasn't qualified, but they said they had an SOJT program. So for that, I took it and passed it. So I spent about years for the division, 3 sections.
Promoted it?
No, I
during
didn't. There was no E6 positions there. The what they call career counseling because I was feeling that not being able to be promoted, put into an MOS that I didn't really ask for, and they're saying, well, we could make you a aide, but the MOS you had to get into a cook MOS. So I went to the career counselor and asked him, if you take that position as general with the cook's MOS, you may not ever get promoted past E6. I get your 6 right away, but you won't get much further than that. But with the 71 Lima, the admin MOS, a lot of jobs have an admin MOS. And you can go from this job to this job. But as a cook, so you're going to be the cook. So I took his advice. It was good advice because I was able to get other jobs, the fact that I had an admin background. So I was with the division, and I left the division to come up to headquarters. I think it was 2. I got a job as a technician, processing orders for the start. At the time, you had to manually input into the computer system name, social security number, all the codes and everything else, and then you had to go in and download them once they were approved, make copies, make physical distribution. We had no email at the time because we didn't have the internet. Did that for about a year, and I had an offer for a civilian job for a lot more money. And I took the civilian job. It was with a private company, family-owned company, and that was a big mistake because privately owned companies, family-owned companies, can hire and fire at a whim, and that's what happened. The guy decided that the position he hired me for, 3 months later, he really didn't need it for whatever reason he had. So he laid me off from there. So I came back to the National Guard and I said, have you got any part-time work going on? Because this was the early 90s and the recession was going on and couldn't find any jobs anywhere. He said, well, recruiting is looking for people to work on ADSW. So I got with the recruiting command, and they had me working for almost a year. And at that time, I was looking to see if I could get something more permanent, like an AGR position. So the position came open with Aviation Battalion. They had a new company in the battalion, Delta Company. Back then, it was the maintenance company. They needed an admin clerk. So that admin background helped me get that job. So I joined the Aviation Battalion in May of 1994. I was the admin clerk / supply sergeant / payroll clerk / training NCO / logistics NCO for the Delta Company. And we had at the time about 74 people. And there was an E6 opening after a couple of years. And worked my way into getting into VNOC, because at the time you gotta have VNOC to get an E6 position. So I was able to finagle getting into school for VNOC, got that, and then I was able to get my 6. Then when I was looking towards 7, in my company, there were only 3 E7 positions, but they were all taken up by technicians in the flight facility. These were fairly young guys, so I knew that these young guys were not going to be retiring within a year or two, that there'd be another probably 15 to 20 years before they retired. So I could see the writing on the wall that there was no way I was going to get my E7 within the Aviation Battalion. So I started looking elsewhere. there was an opening for a readiness NCO with 138th Mobile Public Affairs Detachment. So I interviewed for that job, and I got the job, and I transferred from the aviation to the public affairs in May of 2001. And that's where I've been ever since.
And I see you've got your E7.
Yes. The position at the 138th was an E7 readiness NCO. All I had to do was become MOSQ, and I had actually gone through ANOC when I was in the aviation, so I knew that I was heading towards 7, so while I was in aviation, I got my ANOC knocked out, and that set me up for 7. There were other positions in the aviation, 4 7s. I tried for this one, tried for that one, but invariably somebody else had either more points or more experience or something. So I was getting frustrated. So that's when I saw the opening for the 130th MPAD. So I had to try for that. So like I said, all I had to do was get my MOS at 46 Quebec, which is a photojournalist.
Mm-hmm.
So got the MOS, knocked it out, and I was promoted in November 2001.
Now, you were in Iraq.
Sorry?
You were in Iraq.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Well, we got our alert notice in April 2005, and got our MOB order in July 2005. There was a lot of apprehension by everybody. We were short-handed. We were short a lot of equipment. We didn't have half the equipment we were supposed to have. Luckily, Senior Army Advisor had some contact with the First Army, and he called them up and basically said, look, you're sending these people to war. They don't have the equipment they need to go to war. I think they need to step up and get the equipment for them. And so they did. So they were able to supply us with probably close to $130,000 worth of equipment. Off-the-shelf stock camera equipment. That was our biggest problem. We didn't have the video equipment we needed. So they got us that. And September of 2005, we mobilized to Fort Dix. We spent 2 months at Fort Dix. Left there November 5th. And November 7th, we were on the ground in Kuwait, getting ready to head up to Mosul, Iraq. We were replacing the public affairs unit up in Mosul.
Do you think your training, once you got your MOB orders, you think the 2-month training you had at Dix prepared you for Iraq?
Well, the training at Fort Dix was rather generic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was geared more toward, at least I felt it was geared more toward convoy operations. In one sense, it at least gave us a situational awareness of what goes on when you're out on the streets and the roads in Iraq. So when we did, from time to time, go out in a convoy to go somewhere to do a story, we at least knew what was going on, what we were doing, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. So, but a lot of the training that we got there, I think it was a waste of time. They had set up a quote-unquote FOB on Fort Dix, which was nothing like what we experienced in Iraq. It was out in the middle of the woods. There were tents. Everything was in tents. And it didn't resemble anything I saw in Iraq as far as a FOB and its operations and how it operated. So,
Now, when you say FOB, what do you mean by FOB?
FOB is a forward operating base.
Mm-hmm.
All the bases in Iraq, American bases, are called FOBs or COBs, contingency operating base. So we were on 2 FOBs. I had visited many other FOBs while I was in Iraq. And nothing like what they set up at Dick's. And I was a bit annoyed by that because it didn't give us really any sense of what was going on there as far as base operations. So, but I imagine it was too hard to try to replicate a FOB at Dick's.
Yeah.
But even what they did, it was more, the FOB at Dick's was more of an inconvenience and a pain in the ass than anything else, because it, when we were in Iraq, our FOB life was 10 times better than our FOB life at Fort Dix. So to me, it was a
Which
waste.
two were you assigned to? You said you
When we first got to Iraq, in Mosul, we were in the northern part of the city on FOB Courage. We spent 6 months there. They were closing that FOB down, and then they moved us over to FOB Marezz, which is right at the airfield in Mosul.
I see you have the combat action badge. When were you under fire over there?
It was December 2005. It was the 3rd of December. And we had on FOB Courage, we had areas that were set up for sleeping quarters. They called them pads. In the pad that we were on was at the very edge of the FOB, and they had these concrete barriers, about 20-foot tall barrier walls that enclosed the FOB. Just on the other side of this concrete barrier wall was a highway, very much like the Northway, interstate. And beyond that interstate was a lot of big open fields and some other smaller buildings. It was a Saturday morning, about 6 a.m., and we're just about to get up and go to work. And I was lying in bed, half awake, and I'm lying there, all of a sudden I hear a big boom. It startled me. I shook. Holy crap. I knew what it was mortar. I heard it before. Kind of settled myself down. I said, okay, I guess it's time to get up. And then within about maybe another 20 seconds, 30 seconds, boom, again, a louder boom. And now they always told us that usually you're going to hear about 2, maybe 3, and that's going to be it. They usually throw their mortars in 2 or 3 at a time. So, all right, wait for the third one. Sure enough, in 30 seconds, third, boom. So, all right, that's right. It's done, it's over. 30 seconds later, fourth one went off, even louder. Shook the trailer I was in. And I'm thinking, okay, do I get up and run to the bunker, which is only maybe about 20 feet from where I was staying, or do I stay inside my trailer? Then fifth one went off. I said, all right, that's it. Because when that fifth one went off, I thought for sure it hit my trailer. Because it shook the whole damn trailer, the lights went out, dust was flying, and I said, oh, that's it. So I pulled my pants on, grabbed my weapon, took my helmet on, and I ran out. And as I'm running out there, there's smoke and dust all over the place, and there's people running into the bunker. I ran to the bunker, and that was filled with this dust, clouds of dust. And we waited a couple of minutes, and we heard the quick reaction force coming around, asked if everybody's okay. They were all outfitted with their helmets, their body armor, and their weapons, and all that stuff. Because it was still about 6 a.m. And once they cleared the area, it's all clear, because the quick reaction force was in touch with the command and control element on the FOB. So actually what happened was the mortar hit the top of that bunker that I just ran into. So I think it's a good thing I waited, because had I gone out when I first said I was going to go out, I probably would have been walking toward the bunker when that mortar hit, probably would have been hurt, if not killed. So that's why I got my combat action badge.
Were you under fire after that?
Well, there were many times where the FOB came under fire. We, on Courage, we got mortar rounds hitting the FOB on average twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I mean, there'd be weeks where we didn't get anything. Then there'd be weeks where we looked like we're getting hit every day. And we're always hearing small arms fire going off right outside the FOB, because we were at like a crossroads of interstates, and cars would go by, the guys would stick their AKs out the window and just, you know, let loose on a magazine. Our mess hall got hit by a mortar round. Actually hit the mess hall itself. And one time, a mortar round hit one of the refrigeration units right outside the mess hall. Right outside the mess hall door, when we exit the mess hall, there'd be nicks in the pavement where the small arms fire they had thrown in over the fence, come down and landed on the ground. You can see where the rounds hit the pavement. So we were harassed quite regularly. When I was there for 6 months, I don't believe anyone was killed. Every once in a while somebody would be injured, but nobody killed. Heard that prior to our getting there, they had, the year prior to us getting there, they had, it was 3 or 4 deaths from mortar attacks. So, it was an experience. When we moved to Marezz, they would have a weekly meeting for all the people who were on the FOB. These were all representatives of different units and different facilities on the FOB. And they would give a report of activities going on. And one of the reports was any kind of mortar attacks. Well, they'd say, well, we had a mortar attack on this day at this such and such a time. And when I hear that, like, news to me, I didn't hear about it. Because Marezz was a very large FOB, and a lot of times those mortar rounds would impact and vacant areas where nobody was around. Because the borders were pushed way out and we were at the center of the FOB. So Marezz was quite safe, I thought. Once in a while we'd hear some small arms fire outside the FOB, but it was quiet over there.
Did you ever go out on patrols, or in convoys?
Yes. I had to go out getting stories, photographs. Sometimes I was down right in Missoula, the city. Other times I was on outlying areas, small villages out in the middle of nowhere, where a lot of the Americans were involved with humanitarian projects, putting up schools for kids, putting up clinics, digging wells, or else they had something going on. We were up in Kyrgyzstan for a few days where they had this displaced persons relief going on, where they were giving these people essentials, blankets, heaters, clothing, things like that. We cover stories like that.
Now, were you in the same unit as Denise Slater?
Yes.
She had mentioned something the other day. What did they say? How about your officers?
No.
You can
Any
ignore the
problems
question if you
or-
want.
Well,
She was very general.
I think I would have to be as well.
Okay.
Outside this unit, I served with some very good officers, some really poor officers. But I'll take the high road and just pass it on question.
Okay. Now, how did the unit feel when she became so ill?
There didn't seem to be a lot of sympathy among the officers. The commander had no concern about her. I tried to take care of her as best I could and do for her as best I could. And as a senior NCO, I knew it was my responsibility. Not only to take care of her, but take care of anyone as best I could. Unless I was told not to, I did whatever I could. I got over to the hospital several times because her condition wasn't improving at all. The third time I brought her over there, they finally realized that her condition was persistent and they needed somebody else, better medical care that they didn't have in Iraq. So they shipped her to Germany. But, there were a few NCOs and some enlisted persons who would ask how she's doing, but there wasn't much they could do, really.
Yeah, and it took them almost 90 days, I guess, before they even figured out what was wrong with her from our interview.
Yeah, she was in Germany for quite a while, and even there they couldn't figure
Yeah,
out
it
what wrong
was
with her.
stateside before they...
Yeah, she was stateside for quite a while before they finally... Actually, she was in a military hospital for a couple months in stateside, and they couldn't figure it out. They finally sent her to a civilian medical center.
North Carolina, she
Yes,
was.
that's where they finally figured out what was wrong with her. So, I'm glad they found out what was wrong and helped her. And she's
Now, how did your family feel about you going over at your age and so on?
My wife and I both agree that this is a just thing. It's a noble cause, and that she's very proud of me being in the military and doing what I do and serving my country. She's extremely supportive of me. She wasn't thrilled about me being gone for a year, but she knew this was the right thing. She knew that this was the thing to do. So she supported me. Obviously upset that I was leaving and afraid that something might happen to me. But I don't think my age had anything to do with her concern, you know, even though I knew that you know, I'm not a young kid anymore. Most of the people in my unit were, you know, 20s to 30s. And some of the people I worked with, I'm old enough to be their father. But I wasn't pushing retirement year either. So.
How did you maintain communication with home?
I was lucky, and I say lucky because when I think about the other veterans of past wars, didn't have the communications available to them that I did. We had, because we were journalists, just about everyone had access to an internet outlet. It's a military outlet, and again, because we're journalists, we all had computers, laptops. So we were able to access the internet 24/7. And with AKO, Army Knowledge Online, they have instant messaging with AKO. The military outlets don't allow you to have like AOL instant messaging. It's not allowed on their servers. So I was able to IM with my wife, usually in the mornings. For me, it was morning. For her, it was very late at night. And the evening time, early evening time, which was early morning for her. So it balanced. So I IM'd with her quite a bit.
Did you ever blog?
No, I never got into that blog thing. But I also emailed a lot. Through AKO, I did a lot of emailing, my wife, and other family members. I emailed my wife probably every other day. I am twice a day. I had a cell phone. We first got to FOB Courage, everybody had a cell phone. They didn't have one, they were trying to buy one. And it got to the point where it was hard to get a cell phone because everybody wanted one and the supply couldn't keep up with the demand. But the thing with cell phones in Iraq, you had to buy a little SIM chip for Southwest Asia. And we had on the FOB, we had a lot of little vendors, Iraqi people, who would set up these little shops. And they sell anything from toothpaste to scarves to wood carvings to DVDs and whatnot. And they'd also have these little SIM cards. Well, the thing was, you'd ask, what's this guy over here selling SIM card for? He's selling for 60 bucks. What about the guy over there in that little shop? He's got it for 40 bucks. What about this guy over here? He got 50 bucks. So you find out which guy had the cheapest price and you go to him. So that's what I did. I found out one guy way over on the other side of the FOB was selling for 40 bucks. So this guy next to me was selling for 60. So I'll walk over the other side and get 40 bucks. So I had to put that in my cell phone. But I had to call back. My wife had to get with the carrier back here, T-Mobile, because I was on a one-year contract still. They had to suspend my contract so I could put the chip in, activate it, and use the phone. So that came in handy, but I had to pay, with the SIM card from Iraq, you also had to buy these little minute cards, which were fairly cheap because I would buy a $30 card, and that usually lasted me for 3 hours. Compared to a lot of other cards, you buy a $10 card that got you about 10 minutes. So this was really good pricing as far as I was concerned. So the cell phone, I call her a couple times a week, just talk to her. I am twice a day, email every other day. So my contact with my family and friends was very, very good. And when you think back about guys in Vietnam, even Desert Storm, all they had was letters. They were lucky they got able to get a phone call once a month or so. So contact with my family, I think that helped me a lot to maintain the sanity, also maintain continuity with my family through the communications, because when I came back, I had no problems transitioning.
When did you come back?
We got back in late October of 2006. We spent a day in Kuwait, a day or two, day and a half I think it was. And then we flew to Fort Dix, where we were out of there in 3 days, which was a good thing. Everyone was anxious to get home. So.
In retrospect, looking at the surge that's going on now, do you still feel the same about the mission in Iraq? Or
Well, I think that we're there for the right reason. My personal opinion is I think that Iraq needs to do a better job of getting themselves to the point where they can defend themselves. I think they're just dragging their heels. I think they've become too dependent on us, but I think it's a cultural thing. Under Saddam Hussein's rule, people had to do whatever they had to do. A lot of people just skated by in life, and the Arab culture that I experienced over there was doesn't seem to be much of a no sense of urgency. No sense of urgency. Things happen when they happen. You can make an appointment with somebody, near a person, meet them at 10 o'clock. Show up at 10 o'clock. They don't show up till 11, 11:30, 12 o'clock. And to them, that's okay. It's natural. It happens. That's the culture. So there's no sense of getting things done at a specific time. And again, the people had to do what they had to do under Saddam Hussein to get by, to survive. And people did things that they normally wouldn't do under civilized conditions. So I think we need to be there. We need to help them. We need to provide support, but I think they're becoming codependent on us. They're not learning to stand up for themselves quick enough. They think that we're going to be there for a very long time, that they're going to just relax and sit back and let us do most of the work. But I think that's the biggest problem right now, that we need to impress upon them that we're not going to be there forever.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Okay, thank you.